good morning, everybody.
Morning, morning.
We are so glad you have decided to worship with us here at New Community this morning. So we invite you that if you're able to stand to your feet as we worship God. We will not be shaken. We will not be moved. Even in the trial, we put our trust in you. Standing on your promise, the just shall live by faith. You can do anything when we take the limits off you. You are God, you are able. Oh, you can do anything when we take the limits off you. You are God, you are able to do anything. Anybody believe that this morning? All right, let's put those hands together. We will not be shaken, and we will not be moved. Even in the trial, we put our trust in you. Standing on your promise, we just shall live by faith. You can do anything when we take the limits off you. You are God, you are able. Oh, you can do anything when we take the limits off you. You are God, you are able to do anything. So we will praise you in advance, like our victories in hand, knowing you are not a man that you would lie. If you said victory will come, by our faith we believe it's done. We receive it, we receive it. So we will praise you in advance, like our victories in hand, knowing you are not a man that you would lie. If you said victory will come, by our faith we believe it's done. We receive it, we receive it. Somebody praise him. So we will praise you in advance, like our victories in hand, knowing you are not a man that you would lie. If you said victory will come, by our faith we believe it's done. We receive it, we receive it. So we will praise you in advance, like our victories in hand, knowing you are not a man that you would lie. If you said victory will come, by our faith we believe it's done. We receive it, we receive it. You can do anything when we take the limits off you. You are God, you are able. Oh, you can do anything when we take the limits off you. You are God, you are able to do anything.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to New Community Church. You walk around and say good morning to others and bless them and show them how good God's been to you. Tell them how good God's been to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
way. When sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well.
We will now dismiss our children and youth, and we will call the ushers down for our offering.
Thank you. Morning. You ready for the blizzard of about 1/10 of an inch of snow this week? Golly bum, they just tease us, don't they? It's good to see you this morning. Glad that you're here to worship with us. Those of you who are joining us on our 3 streams, it's good to have you joining with us this week also, even if you're watching us later on. We consider you part of our church family, and we're glad that you're here. Okay, we're in our 3rd week of our series, Unbecoming, and this is the most difficult one. For those of you who attended college and had some control over your schedule, the advice that I always got was to make your junior year the most difficult. Because freshman, sophomore, you were trying to figure things out, you really weren't sure what's going on. When you're a senior, it's like, you don't care anymore, man. You're on your way out. So don't take anything difficult. Like, your junior year was supposed to be your most difficult year. The problem was, because I'm advanced this way, my junior year was my my 4th year in college. And I hit senioritis as a sophomore. So there was this gap that was just really difficult for me in college. Today's going to be kind of a different kind of service because in this Unbecoming, there's a real tendency for us to look around us or to think about other people because churches kind of promote that. We like to gather together to worship, pat ourselves on the back by how much we're crushing it, and then think about all those people out there who are just getting it wrong and living the wrong way. And so there's a tendency for us to just kind of feel good, like, well, I'm not as bad as those people out there. And so this unbecoming is going to be a little bit more of a stretch for us because it's becoming unattached to the things of the world. And this is always a difficult balance because we are in this world. We've got to work, we've got to make a living, we've got to interact with other people. There's just part of living in this world that requires us to be in the world. So this is not separating ourselves from the world. We don't want to isolate ourselves. We don't want to create a little protective insular bubble where we don't have to interact with, those people. This is what I hope this message is about this morning. It's not letting the world be the most influential factor in how we live. And that is all of the things that we're bombarded with. All of the things that we subject ourselves to that tell us how we're supposed to live and how we're supposed to be and what our priorities are supposed to be, that we do the work of identifying our constant pull into the things of the world and recognize whether those are drawing us in a relationship with Jesus or not. So in the past, if you've been with us for a while, you've been through when we've done a meditation. And what that is, it's a centering device. It allows us to kind of begin to push things out that we drag into this place, all the things you're worried about, all the concerns you have, and really create a space between you and God where you open yourself up for God to kind of speak into your heart. So because sometimes those moments of silence and those moments of interaction with God are so important, we're going to do it twice today to really help us kind of get in tune to listening and perceiving God's voice. Because one is we live in a very busy, noisy world. We very rarely create spaces of silence where we hear from God. And even more so than that, sometimes our time with God is just running through the things so we can check off the list. Read scripture, said my prayer, and then I'm done. And we don't create moments for God to go, oh, I have some things to say, but you're still talking. And so what we want to do this morning is create some space for God to speak to you. And so we're going to turn our attention kind of like inward, not to navel gaze or focus on ourselves, but to create a space for God to speak to us. Now, this is always a premise of what I believe New Community Church is all about and has been about. And this is not to condemn you or judge you or shame you for the ways that you attach to the world or the things that you struggle with. We read last week the classic John 3:16 and kind of admitted to ourselves that we always leave out John 3:17. We like John 3:16 because it's concise and it's pithy and it says everything that we believe, but we don't read John 17 where Jesus said, I didn't come to judge the world. I didn't come to condemn people. I came to save you. And so we want this moment that you spend with God not as a judgy moment for you to feel guilty or shame for the ways that we become attached to the world, but it's to give you freedom. It's to liberate you, to recognize the things that we think are important in the world are really inhibiting us. They're barriers. They're keeping us from just experience not only the fullness of life, but the fullness of a relationship with God. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to put both feet flat on the floor. I want you to put your palms on your lap, hands up. Katie, if you wouldn't mind just kind of dimming the house lights a little bit. And I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to take a couple deep breaths, just kind of cleansing, relaxing. If you have any tension in your body, just kind of feel your shoulders relax, your arms down through your legs. I'm going to ask a series of prompting questions that I want you to kind of work through. And this isn't to reveal the things that you're holding on to. This is beginning the process of listening to God's voice in our bodies. So the first question, as your eyes are closed and you're relaxed in this space, What was the last thing you heard or saw that made you mad? What was it about? How did you feel? What is it in you that made you react the way that you did to that thing? Okay, we're going to make it a little bit more personal. What was the last disagreement you had with someone? What was that disagreement about? Is it resolved? And how are you feeling in this moment about that? And then the last question. I want you to think about the things that bring meaning and purpose to your life. The things that are important to you, the things that you value. What are they? Just kind of picture them in your mind. Why are those things important to you? Okay, you can come back and join me now. Those questions were not to get you to begin to think about the ways that you're attached to the world. What those questions were supposed to do is begin the process of opening up what's going on inside of us to see where our attention is going, what we're focusing on, to grow an inner awareness of ourselves. Several counselors that I've talked to said that one of the greatest harms we can do to another person is not to be self-aware. To not know what's going on inside of us, to not feel all of the drives and passions and desires that are flowing on inside of us. And the reason why it's a harm to another person is because they see them, they experience them. All of who you are, whether you're aware of it or not, those people are experiencing those things. Our longings, our desires, our drives, the things that set us off, the things that make us mad, the things that we believe are important, things that we believe bring purpose and meaning to life, all of those are raging inside of us, a lot of the times outside of our awareness. I'm a huge fan of Mary Oliver, the poet. She said this: attention is the beginning of devotion. The things that you give attention to, the things that are important to you, the things that you focus on, that's where your heart will follow. Jesus told us that. Where your treasure is, there will be your heart. Which means you can't convince yourself to vote yourself to a life following Jesus. There's no amount of mental work or dedicating your heart. Your actions have to lead the way, and then your heart will follow. And so, as we begin to look at what we attach ourselves to in the world, we have to see what our actions will reveal to us about what's going on inside of us. And so I wanted to create that awareness, and in our second meditation, we'll get a little bit more specific of going like, oh, I'm finding myself attached to this. I'm really concerned about this. This is holding my attention. This is capturing my heart. This is eating up my energy. And as we work through this series of Unbecoming, we're moving away from what we traditionally do at the beginning of a year, and that's adding stuff on. I'm going to have some New Year's resolutions. I'm going to set some goals. I'm going to put some action steps in place, all of which are really important. But I think we've already passed the date. Most people say it's like January 10th that most people stop doing the New Year's resolutions that they've started. When I used to work out at Planet Fitness, Robert, you know this, it's bad in January. But by mid-February, man, it's great again, isn't it? Like all those people are gone. And that's the way that when we put things into place, we just kind of get out of the habit. So Unbecoming is saying, I'm not going to put more stuff on myself because I don't believe that's the way Jesus called us to live. We have a habit in our regular life of picking up and acquiring. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because I would have to raise my hand too. How many of you have more things in your house than you use? How many of you have a closet that stuff goes that you don't have the heart to get rid of, but you haven't seen it in years? Don't even know what's in there. You posted on social media that you started doing that, cleaning out, going like, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff. We all do that, and I don't know what it is in us. We're going to talk about this at After Party. What is it about us that wants to just acquire and pick up and add stuff? We do it with our schedule. We're going to talk about this next week. We do it with stuff. We do it with responsibilities. We do it with things we buy. We just like adding stuff on. And we don't realize the stress and anxiety that we add to our lives because we're always acquiring things. And we do it in our spiritual life too. That we have created this expectation of following Jesus is just doing more and more and more and more and more. And I've given this example the past couple of weeks that we talked about this, that when God put Adam and Eve in the garden, that he gave them these instructions. Man, this is all yours. Take care of it. Have fun. Enjoy what I've given you. Just don't eat from that tree. That's all I'm telling you to do. And then it wasn't that much longer before we created, I'm going to say we because we do it too, 613 laws about what's the Sabbath and what does it mean to work and what everything is all about because we like to add stuff on. And I think we took this unburdensome way of living for God and we made it so heavy. What Jesus called a crushing burden when he talked about the Pharisees, that he offered the people who were trying to live under all of these laws something different. He said, take my yoke. It's lighter. It's less of a burden. Jesus told the Pharisees, like, you're crushing all the rules that you made up. You are nailing it. But I've noticed in watching you interact with people, you're missing kind of the spirit of what it means to live for God. Like you're doing all the things just right. But there's something missing that other people aren't picking up on. And this is why others were drawn to Jesus. People who weren't like Jesus. Jesus was a very devout Jew. He followed the rules until the time came for him to reach out to other people. And people were drawn to him because of this lighter life that he gave us. And I know this about you because you're here on a Sunday morning or you're joining us in worship, is that you really want to live this life honoring God. Like you really want to have this life that grows closer to God, that receives all of the fulfillment and wholeness and salvation that God has to offer. But sometimes we just bury ourselves underneath this heavy load of responsibilities and duties and obligations, and we miss the joy and the freedom and the lightness that comes from a relationship with God. Here's a quote that we've used the past 2 Sundays that I think kind of is our grounding for this series. Maybe the journey isn't about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so that you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. So we started off this year not adding things to you, not telling you here's all the things that you need to do, but giving you the freedom to take on the yoke of Jesus that's lighter and shedding everything that isn't that. The first Sunday we talked about just what it means to unbecome, the work of unbecoming, of taking on this lighter load. Last week we talked about unbecoming this need to earn God's love. Like we've got to step and fetch as fast as we can so God will love us. And the day is unbecoming the world to find true meaning. Now this is what I love about Jesus, and you'll see this in this passage, is Jesus creates the tension that we all feel living in this world. He identifies it. He said, the world demands from us to make money, to earn a living, to provide for our family, to do the things that it takes to make sure that we take care of the people that we love. That's important. We're supposed to do that. So don't hear me saying up here that you're supposed to live in a van down by the river. Do I do this afterwards? That's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying is there is this tension of living in the world and the things the world tells you important, and then there is this life following me. And I want you to recognize that it is going to pull at you. Jesus said of all the things that are going to make a play for our heart, it's the things of the world. It's the things that are shiny and flashy and that we want to have. And so this work of unbecoming attached to the things of the world, we've got to get to the place where we identify us. Not those people out there who are doing or not doing the things that they're supposed to do or not do. It's our work. This is between you and God. And it's for us to be honest. And I'm going to challenge you with the question. That some point during this week, I want you to ask God, what is it in me that you see that I don't see? And I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I double dog dare you. Because God will reveal it to you. There'll be a prompting. There'll be something that pricks your conscience. There'll be somebody who says something to you. And if you prayed that prayer with honesty, God's going to go, this thing. This is the thing in the world that you're attached to. Yes, it's important. Yes, you've got to do this thing, but you've attached more meaning and more purpose to it than you should, and it's getting in the way of our relationship. Now, I would use a lot of relationship examples, but I'm not going to because we all do these things with other people, where we allow things to get in the way of our ability to relate to them. So our primary scripture this morning, and we'll have some other scriptures as we go through here, is Matthew 16, where Jesus kind of lays it on the line. Here's the tension that you're going to experience between the things of the world and the life that I'm offering you. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? And so Jesus is saying is, there's a part of you that is God created. It is divine that's inside of you that's supposed to experience the fullness of life. This isn't an aesthetic life where we have to constantly beat ourselves and deny ourselves of everything. What he's saying is there is a life that is fuller, it is richer, it is meaningful, it is purposeful. It's when you get to the end of your life, you can look back and go, man, I lived the life I wanted to live. Because no one at your funeral is going to go, wow, she had the greatest shoe collection. Did you ever see her shoe collection? And I've got to wrestle with it. This is me owning myself as, man, did you see how clean he kept his car? Like his carpet was always immaculate. The windows were always clean. He would always bark at his wife if she touched the window after he washed and waxed it. Not that I do that, but someone I know might do that. We've got to realize that we have this tension about things that are important, and we have to recognize they're important in this life that God is calling us to. Now, let me talk about soul real quick. I'm going to do this as gently as I can. Your soul is not this disembodied spirit that lives inside of you, that when you die, it leaves your body and goes to heaven. That was from an episode of Casper the Friendly Ghost that you watched. There's nothing in Scripture that says that. Whenever the soul is talked about, it's in reference to your entire self, all of who you are. That it contains your heart and your mind and your body. And then the soul is all of these things that are added together. To get a little nerdy on you, it's Gestalt theory. And Gestalt theory says the sum of the whole is greater than sum of the parts. You can have all the pieces of your phone sitting out on a table, and they won't do anything. But something different happens when you put them all together that's different than just of all the pieces. And so your soul is the recognition that when you get your mind and your heart and your body all of in alignment, there is something greater that happens. And that's this divine presence of God. It's all of who you are. And so for us to do this work of identifying what's inside of us, we have to be aware of all of the components of our soul. We have to know about the things that we dwell on, the things that we think about, the things that we ruminate on. We have to know about where our heart leads us and what attracts our heart and what guides our heart. And then we have to be aware of what's in our body, what we're holding on to. So know that about the soul. When Jesus says, are you willing to so make the things of the world important that you're willing to lose your soul? It's not this ghostly, wispy thing inside of you. It is everything about you. That your mind goes in a direction it doesn't need to go. Your heart is attached to things that it shouldn't attach to. And you allow your body to participate in things that your body shouldn't participate in. That's what Jesus says about losing your soul. He also talks about gaining your soul. So this conversation is about counting the cost. In the business world, it's called a cost-risk analysis. Like, if I make this investment, what can I gain if it turns out well, and what is at risk if I'm losing it? And so Jesus is saying, when you're attached to the things of the world and you're pursuing me, you need to count the cost. And that first cost that we evaluate is our life path. What direction do I want my life path to go? You've made that decision 100 times in your life. When you decided to further your education, you said, because this degree is important to me, I'm going to choose this path, which means all of these other paths that I could have chosen, with all of the options on that path, I'm going to deny myself because this is important to me. And when you choose that path, you are saying no to a lot of things. When you get married or start to form a relationship with another person, it automatically says, hey, you know what? You probably shouldn't go clubbing on Friday and Saturday nights anymore. You know, in a relationship, there are decisions that you make that go like, I am committed to this person, and it's going to change the way I live my life. If you choose to eat healthy, if you choose to exercise, if you choose to pour yourself into your children, whatever path you choose, that is a commitment of counting the cost, saying, I am willing to give up certain things in order to choose this path. And so what Jesus is saying is, if you want to save your soul, if your life path is choosing to follow me, then there are some things that automatically you need to consider in counting the cost. So we're going to throw some questions up on the Sky Bible. First one is, what path will you choose? When Jesus says that the things of the world are going to attract you, and I am calling you to this life, that first decision is, what path am I going to choose? Which kind of continues with the second question, what will your heart be drawn toward? And the last one is the one I really want you to think about, because we don't usually consciously give this third question that much thought. What will speak to your desires and decisions? What will you allow to influence you? What will you subject yourself to that will speak into your life to give you truth and direction and guidance? What will you allow to define what that life path is all about? So that's the first counting the cost. The second counting the cost is, if I do choose Jesus, and that's an intentional choice, I am committing to a relationship with Jesus, what other choices do I need to make? What other things do I need to come to terms with? And that's what this session is all about. What will it look like to let go of the things of the world? Like the things that speak into my life, the things that I give authority to, what would it look like to begin to identify them and not allow them to have a larger voice in your life than it should? Unbecoming is this constant process of knowing that there are going to be things that tug at your heart. Tomorrow is a day that reminds us of this. All of us, in some form or another, have allowed politics in the last 4 years, 8 years, 16 years to be a larger influence in our lives than our relationship with God. And what we'll do is we'll take our political positions and we'll kind of cram them into our understanding of what it means to follow Jesus, and we corrupt what it means to live this life dedicated, devoted to Jesus. We're cherry-picking our understanding of Jesus, use it just to support our political position. It's not about that.
And we've allowed the world to do that. And we watch the news channel that supports what we believe. We don't challenge ourselves. We don't line it up with the teachings of Jesus to make sure that the life path we're choosing and the way that we're counting those costs is aligned more with Jesus than it is with the way we vote. And that works with everything. It works with material possessions. It works with family relationships. It works with things that you commit yourself to or your kids to. So we have to kind of say this to ourselves. I know in my head what it means to live for Christ. Am I willing to do the things it would take for me to live that way? And this is the tough question, am I willing to walk away from the things that don't? What would it take for you to give up that thing that you know that is in the way of your relationship with God? Now, I'm not saying that everything that you're involved with is a bad thing. There are some things that we have in our life that may not be healthy for us, that may not be good for us, but they're not in the way of our relationship with God. Some of us can handle movies. Some of us can handle certain news networks. Some of us can handle music. And it doesn't affect us. But are we willing to lay it on the table and do the examination to go like, is my life the way it should be when I participate in this? And that is so difficult. I've got a half a bag of candy corn sitting on my high bar at home that I can't decide if I should just chug the whole bag at one time or kind of like just grab a few when I nibble it, because I know it's just pure sugar and honey. And it's really healthy for me. And so there is that wrestling. Like, I know that I'm not going to have like you're not going to see me in the hospital tomorrow having some major heart attack because I had a handful of candy corn tonight. But I also know it's not healthy for me. And so I'm learning to live in that tension. And so that's what it means when we make choices. There are things in all of our lives, yours, not those people out there, that we've got to make that determination. That's not saying, throw everything away. That's not saying so purify your life that you're not in the world, you're isolated. It's saying, what does that thing do with your relationship with God? I love the way that Solomon pursued this when you read the book of Ecclesiastes. Let me tell you, if you ever read the book of Ecclesiastes, do it when you're in kind of a decent frame of mind. If not, it's going to just drag you down to this dark hole. But there's some really neat pieces of wisdom in Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes 2, and you know what some of these things are, but your mind kind of wanders too, where Solomon said, I chased everything in the world to see what was good, what brought me pleasure. I denied myself nothing in the world. I don't know what that means, right? I denied myself nothing. Like, you did everything? Like, everything? But apparently, Solomon was on this search. Like, he literally said, I denied myself nothing. Like, dude, you did the work. And yet I found it all to be meaningless. He called it the morning vapor, the morning mist, chasing the wind, that these things in the world that he thought would bring satisfaction, that he thought would bring meaning, that he thought would give him the life that he was pursuing, none of them did. Now, what he said after this is, just sit down, have a good meal, have a glass of wine. That's life. Now, I'm not saying that because Solomon was a very complicated person. But he realized that he was drawn to the things of the world. He was finding himself wanting to attach to the things of the world, but they didn't fulfill this hole inside of him that he hoped that it would. And this is the work that we need to constantly be doing with ourselves, is identifying the world in us that we keep hoping gives us the satisfaction that we're looking for, knowing that it won't. I thought that when I finally replaced, Tyrone and I talked about this, my old outdated Pixel phone and got an updated Pixel, like, oh, I'm set. I'm good. And then I keep getting emails going like, well, yeah, but do you have the new Google Pixel 37.9 that can make a sandwich for you, it can wash and wax your car. I'm like, well, now I just have a glass brick that doesn't do all the cool stuff like that. And so all the things that we think will bring meaning and satisfaction, we realize that they don't, but a lot of times we still hold on to them. If I can just meet the right person, if I can just get the right job, if I can have 12-foot ceilings, because I was watching on Love It or List It, that 12 ceilings are what you have to have. And I just have 8-foot ceilings, and I'm so unhappy. That we realize that we're constantly chasing things that don't matter. And it's just doing the inner work and realizing, man, I am chasing the wind. I am trying to find meaning and purpose. And Jesus is saying, that's going to happen. What you need to do is do the inner work of identifying those things inside of you that are attaching to the things of the world, that you'll find greater meaning and purpose when you attach to me. So, knowing this and knowing what Jesus told us the world would be like, I want us to do our second meditation. So again, both feet flat on the floor. Katie, if you do the lights a little bit. Palms open on your lap. Sometimes a clenched fist is just, we just turn into a kid holding on to a Cheerios and screaming mine. I want us to be open-handed with this. Close your eyes. Take a couple deep breaths. I want you to turn inward, just you and God in this place. Where are you following or longing for or attached to something that the world values? How are you holding on to them? Is it a tight grip? Can you set them down? Have you assigned more value to them than they deserve? What have you just accepted as what it means to live in our world? Like, this is how it is. What are those things? How are those things that you are identifying affecting who you are? How many of those things are affecting your relationship with God? What do you need to let go of? What do you need to loosen your grip of? What do you need to just outright deny? And the last question, and I want you to sit on this a while. What is the one next thing that you could do to become unattached to the things of the world? Okay, you can join back with me. These are tough and necessary questions that we don't need to ask just in here, but we need to ask them on a regular basis about what we're allowing in the world to grab our attention, to grab our devotion, that stand in the way of the type of relationship that Jesus is calling us to. I want to give you some grace this morning, and myself too, because the world is constantly dangling things in front of us, shiny things, wanting us to grab them, wanting us to find meaning in them, wanting us to find purpose in them. I want to read you a quote by Steve Jobs. A lot of times, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. This is the purpose of the world that we live in. And you know that. Like deep down, you know that your heart is wanting something bigger and more than what the world has to offer us. But you watch that commercial, you have that ad pop up, and you go like, well, I didn't know I needed one of those. They have maple bacon donuts? Like, I didn't even know I needed that till you told me that I needed it. And we have that happen all across the board. I didn't know I needed to have that opinion. I didn't need to know I had to have that thing. I didn't know I needed to watch this thing or know this thing or be familiar with this thing until someone told me. And that's the way the world works. The world wants to sell you that you're unhappy, that you're unfulfilled, that you don't have everything that you need. And we have the answer for you. And Jesus is saying, don't buy the lie. And this is where our struggle is, and this is where I'm going to wrap it up. The problem isn't just that we chase the things of the world and we attach ourselves to them, that we are so in the world we're not aware that we're attached to them. That we have built in us this desire, this longing, these yearnings to find something that's meaningful and gives our life purpose and fills this hole that God placed inside of us that's not a hole, but it's really just a home detector that helps us find God. But we fill it with this other stuff. And we're not aware of how we are attached and connected to the world because we don't know where the line is between us and the world. We're just all in this together. And we're all trying to figure it out. So no judgment, no shame. It's like, this is hard. Like, I'm so in the world, I don't know how to live this life following Jesus. This will probably be one of the most obscure quotes you'll ever get from me, maybe. It's from David Foster Wallace, and this was a graduation commencement speech that he gave at Kenyon College. There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the heck is water?" And then David Foster Wallace goes on to say this, that he is not the wide old fish that has a separate awareness of himself from the larger world. He struggles to separate himself, who he is and all of his being, from the world around him. The most significant and impacting thing around us are often the ones that are the hardest to see and to talk about. It's this awareness that we are fish swimming in the water, and we've become so used to the water, we don't know what water is. And we're so used to being in the world and just accepting the way the world is that we don't see ourselves being separate from the rest of the world. I'm going to throw this up. We're so accustomed to the world, we struggle to find out how to separate from it. And we buy into the explanations of why it's okay to not know what water is. This is the work of unbecoming, is to find out who you are in God, to be able to separate yourself from the world, to still be in the world, but not of the world. So we ask the question, how are we in the world but not of the world? Just so you know, that's not in Scripture. But it's close. We just need to kind of be aware of those things. This is what Jesus said in John 17. "Now I am coming to you. I told them many things while I was with them in this world so they would be filled with my joy." Jesus is praying to God as he's going to the cross. This is what he wants for his followers. So the first one is that they would be filled with joy. Everything that I've told them about how to live, about my lighter yoke, about this easier way to live that's not a burdensome obeying all the rules, is so they could experience joy. So our ability to detach ourselves from the world is not so we can live this really hard, difficult life. It's to experience the joy that Jesus wants to give us. "I have given them your word, and the world hates them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world." Now, this is where it's really easy to point to other people who are living a way that we don't agree with. or that battle different sins than we battle. This is our work we do with ourselves. What is it that I'm devoted to about Jesus that's causing me to live differently in this world? And then I love the way Jesus worded this. I am not asking you to take them out of the world, but to keep them safe from the evil one. We are not supposed to isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. We are supposed to be salt and light. The object of purity is not to become pure. The object of living this life devoted to God, of holiness, of separateness, is to be an influence to other people who are struggling because they're attached to things that don't bring meaning, going, wow, what is it about you that allows you to handle really difficult situations when I fall apart? And then it gives us an opportunity to go, let me tell you about my Jesus. They do not belong to this world any more than I do. Make them holy by your truth. Teach them your word, which is truth. Just as you send me into this world, I am sending them into this world. So we are to live with others. And I give myself as a holy sacrifice to them so they may be holy by your truth. And so this gives us something to build on, that we are to be in the world. We are to live in a world that is imperfect, that's broken, that struggles with its priorities, and we are to be a shining example of not isolating ourselves, but living in this world with everything that's going on in this world as a life of hope, of what a life dedicated to Jesus is all about. So my last analogy that ties in with the David Foster Wallace quote is, Janet and I, since we both grew up in Florida, are giant seafood fans. Like, if we go on a trip and we're close to the coast or something like that, it's seafood all the time, all the time. Now, one thing I don't know if you've ever noticed about seafood, but most seafood lives in the ocean. I don't know what they call fish from the lake. It's not seafood. I guess it's just fish. Growing up at the beach in Florida, I noticed that after you spend a couple hours in the ocean, like your mouth dries up and your skin dries up because the ocean is very salty. There's a lot of salt in the ocean. Like if you drank it, it would send you into convulsions. However, when you eat really good seafood, you will notice that it's not salty. Have you ever noticed that? That fish can live in the ocean, scallops and shrimp and all the gifts that God has given us. But they're not salty. So they have this ability to be in the ocean, to exist in the ocean, to live in the ocean, but to not become salty. So I could easily make the pun that you know that you're living for Jesus when you're not a little bit salty, but I find myself a little bit salty at times, so I'm not going to use that one as an example. But this is what it looks like to exist in a world that really isn't the world that we're supposed to be in. That yes, we have to go to work. We have to navigate traffic. We have to eat out and go to grocery stores and get our hair did and all of those things. We are in this world, but we are in this world to be an example of what it means to be fully dedicated to Christ. So we have to say, this is water I'm swimming in. Like, I recognize that I am in a world that's going to try to distract me, that's going to want me to attach to other things, but this is not who I am, and to work to be truly free. This is what it means to unbecome the things of the world. This is what it means to do the hard, dirty work of identifying those things in our life that we've attached to. It starts with this, with the first path that you choose that I want to live a life dedicated to and following Jesus. I'm going to make that decision. And my guess is many of you here have already made that or in the process of figuring that out. But the second question then is what we asked earlier, and that is, what choices is that going to cause me to make? At this stage in my Christian walk, at this point of what it looks to live a life dedicated to Jesus, what can I handle? What can I allow myself to participate in the world? And there are some things that I am not mature enough about to handle. Janet and I made this commitment years and years and years and years ago. We don't watch any cable news, and we limit our news intake because we realize that it feeds us in a way that doesn't honor God. that it riles us up, it makes us mad, we just stomp around the house. Now, we're both in agreement, so it's not at each other, but we're not doing anybody any favors by just stomping around being mad all the time. I'm not mature enough to handle how that influences me. And for you, it may be something else. It may be music. It may be where a relationship is gone. It may be any other media. It may be materialism, that you've allowed yourself to become more attached to things of this world than you should. And what Jesus is saying, I'm not judging you or condemning you for doing this. He said there is going to be this tension. It's going to be a struggle to do this. But the life that I offer you is a life that gives you purpose and meaning, and you will be a beacon of hope for people around you who are attached to things that don't bring any value or any purpose. We talked about this last week. God didn't save us just to save us. God saved us to do good works. That's why we're saved. And so this life that we live of unbecoming attached to the things of the world and a life focused on a path of following Jesus is so that when others are struggling and they come to us and go like, how do you do it? How do you handle the things in your life that you handle? How do you handle losing your job? How do you handle that relationship ending? How do you handle struggling with your finances? And you say, because I'm not attached to those as far as bringing purpose and meaning to my life. And they'll say, well, then how do you do it? And you go, let's go have a cup of coffee. And let me explain to you why my life is the way that it is. This is why the work of unbecoming is so important. And why God has called us to this life. So let me challenge you and encourage you. One, make this work, about your life, about your relationship with God, and not those people out there. And do the continual inner work of identifying where your heart is being drawn toward. Because it's not a one and done. There's going to be constantly new things that are going to pull you to find purpose and meaning in other things than in a personal, intimate, vibrant relationship with Jesus. That's going to bring more contentment, more meaning, more purpose than anything else that you would attach to. And as I've said the past couple of weeks, we don't end the service with an altar call. There's not an opportunity to come down here. But your staff is always available. Your elders are always available. If you want to know who they are, go to the website. Everyone's picture, description, contact us. Because this isn't me preaching at you. This is a conversation that needs to go on beyond this. Let's pray. God, we thank you that you have called us to this life that is beyond just the stuff around us. It's a life that's rich and meaningful and purposeful. A life that when we get to the end of it, we can look back and we can realize that we devoted all of who we are, our soul, all of ourselves, our heart, our mind, everything, toward the life that you've called us to. God, give us courage and honesty to examine those parts inside of us that we've attached ourselves to the world. And give us the strength to be able to let those things go and to take on the yoke that you've offered us. We thank you that you have given us this life and this calling. We pray in your Son's name. Amen.
You can do anything when we take the limits off you. You are God, you are able to do anything. I want to thank everybody for coming today. Let's give our Pastor Cal a round of applause for that message. Unbecoming. Thanks, Pastor Cal. We got a few announcements before we go. After party, if you want to get a little bit more in depth of the message today, and you can join after party. Just go out, make a left, go back to the conference room, and you can talk a little bit about the message and maybe other things you might want to share. You don't have to worry about, if you've never been to after party, you don't have to worry about going in there and just saying too much. You can just go in there and listen. It might be something you need to hear. I was talking to a person out there that a part of after party, and she said all she does is, yeah, okay. So you can do that. You don't have to talk much. You can say, yeah, I know what you're talking about. You can do anything you want to do, but you don't have to worry about being intimidated. And you want to join that and hear a little bit more about the message, join after party. Women of Worth, they're meeting this week, Wednesday, Thursday. Wednesday, virtual, 6:30. Thursday morning, 8:30 here. So you want to join some of the great women at New Community, led by our pastor's wife, Miss Janet, back there in the back. So come join some great women on Thursday morning right here at New Community. Next one, Grief Share. We're starting the Grief Share group. It's headed by one of our lovely elders. I don't want to put on the spot, but it starts February 10th, and it'll be here Mondays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We have a sign-up sheet outside, so if it's something you want to hear or something you need to share, come join our Grief Share group starting February 10th. Managing your money. So if you have some issues with, you want to learn things about how to manage your money better, that starts February 9th, and that'll be right after service starting at 11:30. So if you got to kind of twist it, if you want to go to after party or managing your money, I'm going to leave that up to you. So some of you might really need that class. I know I do. So join that, and that's starting February 9th, 11:30, right after service. We have a sign-up sheet outside for that also. All right, I think that's all our announcements. Like I always say, let's support our great teachers, our educators. Let's mentor our great students. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday. Thank you for coming.